Now, in part 1 of this series, I explained the series of mergers and acquisitions that have today formed the Big Six banks. All of these mergers seem harmless until we remember in 1999 the enormously controversial series of mergers that the large banks attempted to pull off in the 90s. In 1998, one of the most brazen attempts at testing our antitrust laws, the closest we ever came to a financial duopoly in Canada when RBC and BMO attempted to merge into one enormous bank at the same time as Toronto Dominion Bank attempted to merge with CIBC to form mega banks so large that just these two banks would account for 60% of our financial system. Luckily, former Prime Minister Paul Martin, who was at that time the finance minister, rejected the proposal. To put this in perspective, if this proposal was approved, this would mean TD CIBC and Royal Bank of Montreal would control roughly $2.2 trillion in assets each in 2016, with a combined revenue of $100 billion a year. This would mean that two banks would make up 6% of our GDP. Just to put this in perspective yet again, if you take these two largest companies in the US, Walmart and Berkshire Hathaway, with a combined revenue of over $700 billion a year, it is still less than 4% of the US economy. Yet the US is 10 times the size of Canada, and with that much economic output and assets in the hands of just two companies, this breeds much more than just raw greed. It breeds systemic risk and moral hazard. Make no mistake, banks this large and concentrated aren't regulated. They call the shots, and with so much money and control in the hands of a few executives, they can single-handedly command the powers that be to form policies and regulation that further favors them and their profits, further concentrating wealth and power until, well, we don't know, because this has never happened anywhere in the developed world, and that's the point. Even without these mergers, we already take on a vast majority of the risk these banks take on. We bail them out quietly without alerting too much media attention, and most of the time we turn a blind eye to the numerous ethical and legal violations they regularly commit. The question becomes, why do we continue to support and in turn turn a blind eye to such dangerous concentrations of wealth and power? Well, let's take a look into the exact arguments for such. We first need to understand that banks are different from any other type of corporation. With almost every other corporation, you are more than happy doing business with them. You most likely shop at Costco because they offer you excellent service, good deals, and a pleasurable shopping experience. Otherwise, you wouldn't go there. You most likely drive a Toyota because they're reliable, no-nonsense cars. And in order for Toyota to get your business, they had to offer you a car that will be on the road for the next 20 years with little to no maintenance. However, with the large six banks, and this applies for most banks in the world, they're not a traditional corporation. They're an intermediary, meaning they don't offer you anything that you actually want, but rather, much like FedEx, they're a necessary in-between between you and an Amazon warehouse, essentially financially connecting us all. However, this is where the similarities end, because if FedEx, UPS, and Canada Post were the biggest, most profitable companies in Canada, not producing anything of value, but simply being the intermediary in the economy, shipping packages around, we would obviously have a lot of questions and concerns about how this happened exactly. In the past decade, since 2007 to the present, this is the present growth for all companies listed on the TSX. Looks good, right? Now, let's subtract the Canadian banks. This paints a disturbing picture, as despite some companies doing well and some doing poorly, we still on average have little to nothing to show for our economy than simply an ever-growing financial sector. Now, for many people, questioning how the banks and financial companies need to or even are able to earn so much profit and command so much control in our economy may sound like a conspiracy theory, but that's only because we have nothing else to refer to as a normal economic balance. You see, the last time banks controlled this much of our economy and finance itself became such a large portion of our GDP, employing huge swaths of the population, was right before the 1929 stock market crash that led to the Great Depression. The economy has become less about fundamentals, like producing things of actual value, and became more about investing, lending, and earning money from various investment vehicles. However, this time, the side effects are much more apparent. What does a bank earn the bulk of its earnings from? Well, loaning money, of course, and that's evident with Canadians continuing to lead the world in personal debt. Systematically taking out loans until our personal debt levels have hit $2.2 trillion, not to mention charging fees, and even more fees. A fee for paying your bill, a fee for withdrawing your own money, and even a fee for not having enough money. All of the banks raising their fees in tandem, all at the same time, almost every year without fail. However, we are taught as a child that this is normal, and we never really question it. We have so many options when it comes to everything else in our economy. But if you want to pay your electric bill or get a paycheck deposited or not live like a drug dealer, you need a bank account. And in this modern day and age, there are dozens of ways to contact the same person anywhere in the world. Self-driving cars are becoming reality, and artificial intelligence is just on the horizon. However, if you want to send someone money on the other side of the world, you still need to pay exorbitant fees or wait weeks for a wire transfer. Money laundering, drug money, and fraud aside, for the average person, banking is still an archaic process where checks take 5 days to clear and can still bounce, and more often than not are more risky than just accepting an IOU. Till this day, it is still more secure and more convenient to purchase something on Kijiji with a wad of plastic bills. How is it that this industry, above all others with little to no innovation and a semi-monopolistic business model, seem to get the panda bear treatment while not being remotely cute at all? Well, if you're looking for a decent job, typically one of the best employers in Canada are often the big banks. For the most part, if you want to pursue a career in finance, business, or administration, you most likely need to work for one of the big banks, and largely they're the best option for new graduates and experienced personnel alike. And this is the Achilles tendon in our pursuit for fairer banking and more competitive financial services. Almost any discussion attacking the big banks and their egregious profits almost always ends up with the average worker being used as a PR body shield, quickly denouncing any attempt to regulate or introduce foreign competition that will result in Canadians losing their jobs, and will genuinely be bad for the economy. If there's anything that banks would care less about, other than paying you any sort of interest on your savings account, it's employees. For the past 10 years, Scotiabank, CIBC, BMO, and most notably TD and RBC have been on a campaign to see who can offshore and lay off the most employees. The current record holders are the automakers. And so far, they have been doing a fantastic job at sending lines of Canadian workers onto EI. Many of us forget the RBC temporary foreign worker scandal of 2013, and ever since they've been fixing their ways by just firing employees rather than replacing them with foreign workers, and TD Bank replacing employees with foreign consultancy services and outsourcing IT work to India, which caused a rather embarrassing outage of e-transfers being stuck in limbo, not to mention outsourcing fraud investigations to foreign countries. So when your Canadian credit card is used in Poland, a gentleman in Bangladesh will most likely be finding out why. Again, the argument for keeping Canadian finance strictly Canadian quickly becomes a moot point when you remember our American friends have no qualms about Canadian banks buying up US banks. Even TD and RBC and BMO operate US banks under their trade names. We overpay our banks so they can spread their Canadian love elsewhere while keeping us with rising fees and glacial level innovation. But all of this greed is often unpleasantly justified by those who banks answer to.